This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Annamarie Pluhar. Although Annamarie is a passionate advocate of shared housing, her background is in instructional design and managing complex development projects. And she has a strong expertise in lean management principles. She founded Share Housing Inc., a nonprofit organization with the mission of advocating for and educating people on how to share housing for the benefits of cost, company, mutual support, sustainability, and really whole person health. And she's written a book, which is available on the shop page of our website. It's called Shared Housing, a guidebook for finding and keeping good housemates, which gives a step-by-step process for screening potential housemates. So welcome, Annamarie Pluhar.
I am delighted to be here, Nan. Thank you for asking me.
Annamarie, you've actually lived in shared housing for over 20 years. Tell us how the idea came about to write the book.
Yes, well, there I was living in shared housing, and a friend of mine was on the phone. We were talking and she was complaining about her finances. And I said, well, you have an asset, use it. And I wish I could do exactly with the sound of her voice, but it was something like, I don't know how to do that. And I did something like, well, I do. And she went, oh, yeah, you do, don't you? And we started talking and she said, would you coach me? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Sure, I'll coach you. And it popped the idea in my head. I looked around. The internet was a baby at the time, but I looked around and didn't see any books on the subject. And I thought, maybe I should write a book. And the next day, I was on a bus from Silver Spring, Maryland to Washington, New York City. I remember it well. I pounded out the outline in 2 hours. And total focus. And then it sat on my computer for 4, 5, 6 years until the day that I heard myself say to myself, on the way from the bed to the bathroom, are you ever going to do that project? And I did, I think I'd better do that project. And so I said yes, and a number of other things happened, and it just felt to me like the universe was saying, do this, it's important. So the book came out in 2011, and I've been working on this ever since.
Well, it must be meant to be, because if you can do that in 2 hours, you have it all in your head. You've been thinking about it probably for quite a long time. And so it was kind of like organizing and doing a head dump. How did it work?
Yeah, well, so I think that the answer is I like models. I mean, my management consultant background, lean management, I've always liked models and process. And what had happened is I realized that over the years of interviewing people to come and live with me and then living with them, I had developed a process that worked for me that was efficient, effective, made me feel safe, which I know is one of the things people worry about. And I thought, I'm an educator. Why don't I teach it to other people? So I am working on teaching other people how to do this process.
Well, that's great. Now, in our introduction, we listed the benefits for living in shared housing, but can you elaborate on those a little bit?
I would love to, because I think most people just think about the cost benefit of living in shared housing, and that's obvious. But I believe that the companionship benefit is truly important, that the help, the mutual support that housemates can give each other when just maintaining a home. I mean, there's so much work to be done. Washing the kitchen floor, cleaning the bathrooms, taking the trash out. When you live by yourself, you do it by yourself. When you live with other people, you share it. And then there's mutual support in what I call a spectrum of help, from convenience, asking somebody to feed the cat when you go away for the weekend, versus the kind of support of life-threatening emergencies, falling on the floor, which is the obvious one for old people. So there's all of that. So then there's sustainability. That's pretty obvious, I think, living lighter on the earth. But the one that really gets me, that belongs to me, and I'm sharing it now with you and the world, is what I call whole person health. And for me, what that means is that I believe that as humans, we are meant to give and to receive on a daily basis. And this cycle of giving and receiving is something that happens naturally at home when you live with other people, in couples and families. But when you live by yourself, it doesn't happen as naturally. And I think that if we don't get to give and to receive, our souls shrivel up, that there's a sadness that begins to start happening. So by living in shared housing, people can have just the benefits of cost, the companionship, but this other thing that I'm calling whole person health that I think is so important and may actually be behind some of the statistics about why loneliness is such a problem.
It makes so much sense because I think it is difficult. That's why people get animals.
Right. Absolutely. So they can touch something, so that they can love something, so they can take care of and have that sense of companionship. I deeply believe that more people would be very happy if they can figure out how to share housing.
Well, is there kind of a typical profile of people who are interested in share housing, like age, gender, whatever?
Yes, yes, and no. I will say that in general, women are more interested than men. And I actually had a male friend call me up and complain about how I was never talking about the men. But women seem to be more open to it. I think men, I don't actually know why. And these days, although we tend to think of it for younger generations, the straight out of school, graduate school kind of thing, I'm really focused on the seniors, the boomers, my generation, who may never have married, don't have children, and are looking at, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I think that if they can develop a relationship, which I call home mate, then they can have that sense of belonging that is so essential to being human.
Well, I would also think people who have been divorced or people who have been widowed,
Sure,
maybe have been used to living with somebody else, and all of a sudden there is nobody.
I didn't mean to leave them out.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm working on a course right now, and I have a statistic: more than half of adults are single, whether they're widowed, separated, divorced, never married. And yes, I absolutely think that they could have this relationship.
Now, I know you've been involved in shared housing for 20 years. Is generally this more of a short-term option or a longer-term housing solution?
It depends. I am very fond of saying it is completely situational. It depends on who you are, what you want. Some people might want short-term as in Airbnb type short-term. Some people might want short-term as in knowing that they've invited a graduate student who's going to leave at some point. And some people want long-term. I once had somebody come up to me at a talk, elderly woman with a cane. She said, I lived like that for 30 years. I never thought nothing of it. So I think it depends on who you are and who you are.
How can you match people together? I mean, how do people know there's something available, or on the other side know that person wants it?
This is hard. Okay. And if I could wave a magic wand, I would have a home share matching program in every single county in the country. But we don't have that. And there are about 3 dozen home share match programs, and that leaves a lot of people out in the dark. So what I'm working on doing is teaching people how to do it themselves. And I also believe adults have agency, right? Sometimes we might want to do it ourselves because it's very intimate. Who are you going to live with? You know, that's so personal. So what I'm trying to do is give people the skills they need, help them understand what are the steps, what do they need to pay attention to, what's important, what's not important, and so that they can go off and create their own announcements and send it out through their networks and find people that way.
Are there any zoning restrictions that could be a problem?
Every state, every county has their own zoning, and it is worth paying attention to. Some places have zoning requirements. There was a group of people, friends, who bought a big mansion in Hartford, Connecticut, and they ran into the problem that there was a zoning requirement that said a certain number of unrelated adults couldn't share a house unless those unrelated adults were servants. Outdated, and I think they finally won their case. But it's worth paying attention to ahead of time just to make sure that you're not going to run into a zoning issue.
So let's talk about how you would know that this would be a good living arrangement for each other. I'm thinking about who gets a shelf in the refrigerator, to morning people versus night people, versus is the TV too loud? How do you know in advance, or is there any kind of screening you can do?
Yes, please. My entire thing is that you have to have conversations about all of that before you agree to live together. In other words, you need to have clarity and agreement around, here's a list: cleanliness, neatness, kitchen use, noise, guests, tasks, and bills. And if you have those, clarity about what they are and agreement about how to maintain them, you can live together.
Where does something like cleaning up your mess, not cleanliness necessarily, just clutter type stuff, is that?
Well, I call that neatness. That's
okay.
neatness.
That's neatness. Okay.
That's neatness. One of the things I've done is I have a interview guide up on my website for sale. And in that guide, I have created a multiple choice little questionnaire. And my idea is that 2 people would each take the questionnaire, and then they could sit down and have a conversation that would start with, what did you say to number 1? And that's a way to lead into the conversation. What's incredibly important is that all of the negotiation and conversation about living together is easier to do before you have agreed to live together. If you've already moved in and then you turn around and say, well, I expect you to clean the bathroom every other week, and you haven't agreed to that, that's a source of conflict. So don't do that. Okay. Also, I teach a class. I teach Discovering Shared Housing 4 times, not 4 times. It's a 4-session class. I teach it over Zoom to help people. And we're working on developing an online course to be available all the time.
So all of that is on your website?
All of that is on my website, sharinghousing.com.
Sharinghousing.com. Okay. And it seems like that would be so helpful. I mean, I think of even little things like, well, I roll the toilet paper this way. And so crazy thing.
I am laughing because I was a house guest of a friend, and she had it a certain way, and I hated it that way. And I changed it just quietly. And the next time I went into the bathroom, she'd turned it back.
Exactly. So, yeah. So many things I think like that we don't think about, but they're the way we live, the way we're used to it.
That's why my definition is that you have to be compatible enough to be comfortable living together. 2 neatniks can live together. 2 slobs can live together, just to use one dimension. 2 people who like to knock back 2 bourbons a night can live together, but should not try to live with a teetotaler, that kind of a thing. And it's all about being authentic and real in the interview process.
Do you find that people of the same gender tend to want somebody of the same gender, or is there an age or, any preferences that you're seeing?
I smile because generally I will have women say to me, oh, I only want to live with a woman. And I say, don't say that so fast. It's kind of interesting. There are a lot of very nice housemate relationships, homemate relationships of a woman and a guy, because they use homes differently. Guys are happy taking out the trash. It's really interesting. Episodic work. I don't know what it is. So I don't think there's any particular requirement. It's really who you are and what you're about. Likewise, multi-generational. Some people, older people, love to have younger people around. Some older people don't want to have younger people around, and vice versa. It's really independent because we're all so different, aren't we?
We truly are. And I think it's just fascinating to think about all of the things all around everything you're talking about. So I'm so excited for people to go to your website and also to go to your book. And so we'll put your book right on our site so people have access to that on the shop page. And that way people don't have to worry about where is it.
And I'm going to underscore something, because I did something early. When I titled my book, I called it Sharing Housing. And the usual phrase is shared housing. And so sometimes I think people don't know how to find me. So sharinghousing.com.
Thank you so much. This is going to be so interesting to see how this all plays out over a period of time.
Likewise, I think so too. Thank you so much.